Over these last weeks, it's been somewhat labored in stating that all stories have 4 levels at which they can be understood and interpreted. You know, that first level is the one where we glean the lesson from that story. And the second level is when we recognize the art of archetypes or the symbols. That is that occult level of understanding. And there's that level of undifferentiated energy where we glean the essence of the story in its relationship to oneness or interrelatedness. But also that for those who have ears to hear, every story has a secret. But to be more specific about stories, it can be said that they are holograms. All stories, and each story is a part of a whole or a hologram, but like all holograms, that part contains the whole. Now, over these years of being together for some of us, it's been recognized that there's a continuum, there's a thread, and you could call that the wave. But we also know that if we relate it again to that hologram, that each story is a particle, and so you don't have to be present to glean the continuum. Do you hear what I'm saying? So each story has its wholeness and can be recognized on all those 4 levels, singly. But for those of us who've been together, we recognize there's a thread, a chain that has said to be endless. And if we look back at some of the stories of the past, we recognize those sayings, take all perceptions from the sensual, the aesthetic, and the transcendent levels of mind and bring them to the subtle levels of mind. And that kind of led us to the question, what is it that happens when stillness and movement meet? And we recognize that we can't even begin to answer that question until we accept and acknowledge that we have attained a place where we do live in the moments. There is a presence, there is a tension. And so when we ask that question, it kind of led us on to an exploration about the levels of existence or movement. And we know there are 3 of those. And that is that cause and effect level of karma and action and reaction. And then there's the level of the occult, that spiritual level that contains all our dreams, our aspirations, and our intuitions, and our creativity, and all of those other things. And then there's that level where we do recognize the interrelatedness of all things. And at that level, this is the level where compassion and empathy and pity abide. But now the question is being posed. What is it? Where are we when we transcend existence, knowing that mind is not who and what we are? It only defines who and what we are. Where are we? What is this place that, for the want of a better explanation, is beyond this Satchitananda, or existence, knowledge, and bliss? And how do we know that we're there? How do we know this place? Because it's not a place. It doesn't contain mind, or it's not contained by mind. How do we know we're in this place? So this is what we're going to explore over these coming weeks with stories. How do we know that we're there? How do we know when we've embraced those three levels of life, knowing that they're neither a place of stillness or a place of movement? So we can ask, what is it when it's not a wave or a particle? What is it when it's not in movement or it's not still? Because we're never still. And we find ourselves in a dilemma. Even when we're sitting quietly in meditation, the blood still coursing through our veins, we can still sense movement. There's no such thing as stillness. We can sit still, but there's no such thing as stillness. We know the movement of life, we know everything is always changing. But how do we reconcile these two so that there's no question of any doubt in our being that we are in that place where the three levels of existence are contained and operating always? That's our endeavor over these coming weeks. So to that end, there's several little anecdotes. There are two acolytes arguing about the pathway to realization. One was saying that it was when you practiced meditation and followed all the precepts and followed the rituals. And the other one was arguing that it was through good works and almsgiving and being out there. And so they got into a very heated argument about it. And at that moment the master came along. And so they asked him, please, will you tell us which of us is right? And the master said, have you ever seen a dog fighting over a bone? And he said, well, have you ever seen the bone getting into the argument? And that's a summation of it for us. Now, there is a very advanced Sufi adept, and he had experience of these three states of existence. He knew them well, but he had an experience. He went to a certain great Sufi master called Maru, and just before he went into Maru's presence at the inn that he was staying at, he had a dream. He dreamt that he saw Maru encircled by fire. And he interpreted this dream as seeing that the great master Maru was in the depths of hell. So he turned around and didn't go into Maru's presence. So when he got back to his place of abode, he learned that the great Sufi Master Al-Ghazali was passing through. So he went to ask Al-Ghazali, what was the meaning of this experience, to be guided to this master, and find that in this dream he was deterred and turned away. Al-Ghazali scolded him roundly and said, you have traversed and experienced the three levels of existence, but you don't know how to interpret them. The real interpretation of this dream is that Maruf was encircled by fire, indicating that you had to pass through that fire in order to be in his presence and understand what his teachings were about. But because of the way and the limitations of where you find yourself, you've been deterred from being in his presence. So that leads us to a question. Again, unless we've accepted and acknowledged and know without a question of a doubt that we are in that place, then our interpretations of life and its experience are going to be distorted. So this question that's being asked right now is a crucial question for us. How do we know? How do we acknowledge that we are in that place where we're not only in a state of Satchitananda, existence, knowledge and bliss, and they become inseparable, but to recognize that all three are working at one time to bring out the blessings that come from that state. So the Sufis say that there are three states. There's the state, the intellectual state, where science and rationality and all of those things come into it. There's that level of states, which we would perhaps call the occult level, where we experience visions and dreams and so forth. And this can be called the occult state. And there's a third state, where you see reality for what it is. And perhaps we can interpret that as being in this state of oneness, where there's no judgment, no differentiation. But we know there's something more than this, because those three levels constitute the levels of mind or existence. So this question that's being asked right now is a very crucial question for that. Otherwise, as we can all recognize, and as has become evident from the interactions over these last days, that there's doubt. Self-doubt can come back in and sabotage us. Sabotage us. We have to be in that place where there is not a trace, not a vestige of doubt. Not just an absence of self. That's what we're going to explore over these coming days. So necessary in this place where there's so much fear abounding. Otherwise, we're going to be dragged into that morass. It's crucial for us. Crucial. So this question is what is now there to be answered for us. How do we answer it when it's not a place, really? It's not a state, really. It's not a thing. It has no form, has no essence, no qualities. That's our challenge. Let's see what comes out over the coming days. Thank you.